The pros and cons of marijuana use for ADC 655, Neurobiology of Addiction, created by Samantha Roses, Samantha Brown, and Ashley Thurn. For our first slide, we have what is marijuana. Marijuana is also known as cannabis, and by other names that clinics use or street names. Cannabis, also known as marijuana, is a preparation of the cannabis plant intended for use as a psychoactive drug or medicine. Cannabis is a Schedule I controlled substance and a Category C. In the United States, marijuana is illegal. However, some states have or are in the process of legalization, such as Colorado. The chemical makeup of marijuana is complicated. You can see on the right we have a chart for the molecular structure of THC. The main psychoactive chemical in marijuana, responsible for most of the intoxicating effects sought by recreational users, is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. The chemical is found in resin produced by the leaves and buds primarily of the female cannabis plant. The plant also contains more than 500 other chemicals, including over 100 compounds that are chemically related to THC, called cannabinoids. There is a heavy debate on whether marijuana should be legalized. In this presentation, we will explore both the positive and the negative viewpoint of legalizing marijuana, as well as the medical viewpoint for marijuana use. First, we'll look at why marijuana should be illegal. Using 5 empirical articles, we will examine why marijuana should be an illegal substance as it currently is in most of the states in the U.S. The first article we looked at was titled Marijuana Use Among Young Women in a Primary Care Setting. The study examined women who completed surveys about marijuana use in primary care clinics. The researchers of the article found that marijuana users were much more likely to also engage in binge drinking, smoking cigarettes, and use other illegal substances than women who did not smoke marijuana. This supports the well-known theory of marijuana being a gateway drug, because marijuana use can lead to the use of harder substances and risky drinking patterns. Researchers who completed this study also predicted that the women in the study were underreporting their use, meaning their drug use is actually more prevalent than initially reported. This can be one of the most common problems with reliability and validity issues in empirical work, because everything is based on self-reporting, which people tend to underestimate and underreport their use. The second article we looked at was titled Psychosis Associated with Medical Marijuana, Risk and Benefits of Medical Cannabis Use. The article examined both the pros and cons of legalizing marijuana for medicinal purposes. There are several great debates on why marijuana should and should not be legalized. According to Pierre, who completed the study, psychosis is one of the risks of using marijuana or cannabis. The study examined a man who developed a psychotic disorder through the use of medical marijuana. The subject also developed auditory hallucinations and believed he was hearing things that were not realistic, and he did not have any of these issues prior to medicinal marijuana use. While the man or the subject reported medicinal marijuana did help his chronic pain, it caused him to develop hallucinations. The researcher Pierre reported the adverse side effects of marijuana are much stronger than the benefits. As you can see, we have a chart on the right-hand side discussing the concept of psychosis and what happens during psychosis, such as delusions, mood changes, disjointed thoughts, self-care declines, whether that be self-care mentally or physically. Hallucinations come both in the form of visual and auditory. The third article we looked at was titled Cannabis Control, Costs that Outweigh the Benefits. This article examined the costs and benefits of legalizing marijuana. Cannabis is twice as carcinogenic as tobacco, making it a health risk to smoke cannabis. This article also discussed the hallucinogenic effects which cannabis has on the neurobiological aspect of the human brain. The researchers discussed how the rate of cannabis dependence has increased and the amount of people seeking help for cannabis dependence has also increased. Just a side note, the most recent development of the DSM-5, now has a diagnosis of cannabis withdrawal, which it did not previously have, stating that, in fact, cannabis is a drug that you can suffer physical withdrawal symptoms from. The next article we looked at was titled Long-Term Effects of Frequent Cannabis Use on Working Memory and Attention, an fMRI study. The researchers in the study examined the negative effects that marijuana has on the body, just like the other studies. Frequent cannabis use affects the working memory and the attention of the user. Disruption of memory, learning, working memory, and attention is one of the side effects. The researchers studied 10 subjects who used marijuana frequently and compared them to 10 subjects who did not use marijuana at all. All the subjects were recruited in the same location, and fMRIs were administered to all the subjects while tasks such as pressing a button and detecting the change in the size of a circle were given. The researchers who completed the fMRIs found the reaction time was much slower on the subjects that frequently used marijuana. They found that the frontal lobe as well as the auditory and visual cortices were damaged in the brains of the frequent marijuana users. This points out the damage that can occur to the brain, whether it is medicinal use or recreational use. In conclusion, marijuana affects the brain chemistry and should remain illegal due to the physical damage that can be done. The next study that we look at will be examining the side of reasons for cannabis use and effects of cannabis use as reported by patients with psychotic disorders. The researcher in the study examined 14 studies in a literature review and summarized reasons for cannabis use and the effects of cannabis use on the users. An important thing to pay attention to in addiction counseling is why the clients start and why they continue using substances. Social reasons was the most reported reason for cannabis use. Increasing pleasure and to feel high was reported by 95% of the subjects. The coping mechanism for people who smoke marijuana and use cannabis seems to be using these substances in order to feel better or to relax. Marijuana users need to be able to identify different coping skills than turning to substances if they do end up in treatment. 50% of the subjects in the literature review reported feeling agitated when they were not using marijuana or cannabis. This can also tie into the DSM-5 category for marijuana withdrawal. 25% of users reported insomnia as a side effect of not using cannabis when previously they were active users. There is a reason that marijuana is illegal. It causes damage to the neurological and physical parts of our bodies. For this section, completed by Samantha Brown and Samantha Roses, we will look at why marijuana should be legalized, benefits of medical marijuana, and the economy. The legalization of marijuana is everywhere in 2015. A few states have already legalized it medicinally and recreationally. The rest of the United States seems like it will soon follow suit with the medicinal part at least. Let's take a look at the benefits of medicinal marijuana and find out why it is such a hot topic right now. In 1970, the U.S. Congress placed marijuana as a Schedule I of the Controlled Substance Act because they considered it to have no accepted medicinal use. Since then, 23 of 50 states in the United States, including Washington, have since legalized medical marijuana. Medicinal marijuana comes in different forms. Many young people believe that if you are using marijuana, you must be smoking it. The fact of the matter is this is not the case. Scientists have discovered ways to extract the THC and cannabinoids and other medicinal properties from the marijuana in order to relieve different ailments. The most popular case is Charlotte's Web. This child named Charlotte had hundreds of seizures a day, to the point that she was not having a normal life. Her parents moved her to Colorado, where marijuana is legal, and started her on doses of cannabinoid oil. The child went from hundreds of seizures daily to about one a day. If that is not a hard case for medicinal marijuana, then we are not sure what will convince you. The name Charlotte's Web was used to name the strain of marijuana that the child uses for her seizures. Charlotte does not sit and smoke marijuana out of a pipe. Her parents put drops of oil under her tongue to administer the CBD. As a society, we have to break the stereotypes of marijuana because there are endless amounts of people that it can help. We as a country cannot let stereotypes or whatever else get in the way of helping people who are in pain and do need the medicinal marijuana. It is almost inhumane to keep something from people that could completely change their lives. Charlotte went from a child who had to stay indoors and suffered from seizures to a normal child. Without the medical marijuana, this would not be able to happen. Cannabis has been found in some cases to help a variety of different things such as migraines, epilepsy, chronic pain, and other medical symptoms. There are valid reasons why the government wouldn't want to legalize marijuana, but one of the pro cases is Charlotte's Web. While Charlotte previously was experiencing medical issues, there is proof that the medicinal marijuana did help her. This article, Medical Marijuana, Medical Necessity versus a Political Agenda. According to recent studies, research has shown that medical marijuana is effective in controlling chronic non-cancer pain, alleviating nausea and vomiting associated with chemotherapy, treating wasting syndrome associated with AIDS, and controlling muscle spasms due to MS. These studies state that the alleviating benefits of marijuana outweigh the negative side effects of the drug. However, despite supporting evidence, the DEA refuses to reclassify marijuana as a Schedule II drug, which would allow physicians to prescribe marijuana to suffering patients. The use of medical marijuana has continued to gain support among states and is currently legal in 16 states and the District of Columbia. Patients have a right to all beneficial treatments, and to deny them of this right violates their basic human rights. Medical marijuana, the conflict between scientific evidence and political ideology. The question is, should cannabis be approved for medical use by a vote of the people, as it has already been done in 13 states? Or is there a political agenda? This article examines the legal, political, policy, and ethical problems raised by the recognition of medical marijuana by over 1/4 of our states. Although punishment can be imposed for the recreational use of marijuana, we will not address the contentious question of whether to legalize or decriminalize the use of marijuana solely for its psychotropic effects, a fascinating and important area of the law and policy that is outside the scope of this paper. We will address the basic question: should the approval of medicinal marijuana be governed by the same statute that applies to all other drugs or pharmaceutical agents, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, after the appropriate regulatory agency, the FDA, has evaluated for safety and efficacy? If not, should medical marijuana be exempt from scientific review and instead be evaluated by Congress, state legislature, and popular vote? We will argue that advocacy is a poor substitute for dispassionate analysis and that popular votes should not be allowed to trump scientific evidence. What can marijuana do for our country? The legalization of marijuana in the U.S. can help with tax revenue, incarceration rates, trade, health benefits, and the economy as a whole. Average annual trade in marijuana is estimated at $113 billion, which represents nearly $45 billion in taxes slipping through our fingers, according to Harvard economist Jeffrey Moran. Marijuana could cut prison spending. Legalization would cut the amount of people who are going to jail due to marijuana involvement. An estimated 1 to 4 people are in prison solely because of nonviolent drug offenses, including possession, sales, and repeat offenses related to marijuana. The combination of factors leads to gross overrepresentation of members of these communities in prisons and jails across the nations. There are 2 links here to videos on the marijuana legalization debate for your reference. These are our references that we used. If you would kindly like to take a look, that's up to you. These are more of our references that we use to complete our PowerPoint. And that is the end. Thank you.